Clementine whimpered as she left her jewelry store through the back exit, covered in muck. Her eyes stung from crying so much, and her whole body shook in fear. Two of her greatest fears have happened. She was alone and surrounded by walkers. She took in every heavy breaths before she started to make her way through the herd. She had just hoped that none of the creatures would notice her. It was a good thing she had been to Savannah with her parents enough times to know which way to go. She thought of her parents. Seeing them as walkers made her very depressed. She loved them. She loved Lee, and now they were gone. She felt hot tears from her eyes before she continued forward, her vision becoming blurry as she wiped away tears with her free hands. Despite how she had to keep going, otherwise Lee's sacrifice would be in vain. Clementine trudged through the field of tall grass. It had taken her all night to get through the herd and get out of Savannah. She had tried to get to the train, but there were walkers all over it, and to make matters worse, she had no idea where Krista and Omid were, and there was no way that they would have went to the train when it was surrounded by walkers. Her legs ached for the rest. She finally obliged to sat down by a nearby log. She looked down to the ground and noticed some used shotgun shells. She picked up one of the shells and examined it. She didn't know of anyone within the group that used a shotgun. And even if the shells were useful, she couldn't use them. She didn't have a shotgun and wasn't able to use one. Suddenly she looked up. Something caught her eye. She looked up at the hill and there were two figures on it. Clementine got up from the log, wide eyes. She dropped the shotgun shell and looked to her mouth to say something. However, nothing had came out. She didn't know if the two figures were Omid and Krista. Upon further examination, both figures weren't too far apart when it came to their height. Omid was significantly shorter than Krista. This meant they were strangers. Clementine was a mixed record with strangers. Lee was the best man that kidnapped her, and that man that kidnapped her was the worst. She looked back up and she was horrified to see the figures getting closer to her. They spotted her. She wasn't so sure what to do. She was too exhausted to run, and there were almost nowhere to hide. She had to stand her ground, and she brought the gun up, ready to shoot if these things were any dangerous. Soon one of them came up on the hill. She had brown hair and brown eyes, and she wore an orange long-sleeve shirt, a pair of blue jeans, and a pair of black shoes. She had a harness to which it had a machete. "It's all right," the man said as he showed his hands. "It's okay. We don't want any trouble. Stay back," Clementine said with evident fear in her voice. The woman soon joined them. She was a tad overweight, wore a long-sleeved shirt, a pair of blue jeans, and black shoes. "Luke, she has to be bit. There's nothing we can do for her," the woman said. "Hold your horses, Tavia. Let me talk to her," the man Luke said. He turned back to the girl and said, "Are you all right? I know you're covered in muck, but are you bit or scratched?" Clementine shook her head in response. Luke noticed that the child was afraid, so he took out his machete and placed it on the ground. "All right, sweetie. I'm going to walk towards you very slowly and take that gun away from you. No one's going to get hurt," Luke said in a calm tone of voice. No! Clementine said. Her grip was becoming shakier. "It's okay. We're not going to hurt you," Luke said as he approached the young girl slowly and got a good grip at the shaker. She wasn't so sure if she could even trust him. She knew that she couldn't shoot them, and Lee had told her that taking a life changes everything. Clementine lowered her head and accepted defeat. Luke took the gun away from her grasp and said, "It's all right." Despite her being covered in muck, Luke pulled her for a hug. She whimpered in response. "It's okay," Luke said. "No, it's not," Clementine whimpered. "My mom and dad, my friends, my group, they're all gone." "Aw, I'm sorry," Luke said as he patted her on the back. After crying for a few minutes, Clementine could hear the woman Tavia speak up. "Get her back to the car. I'm going to see if there's any other survivors in Savannah. That's probably where she came from." "No!" Clementine exclaimed as she got out of Luke's hug. "Don't go to Savannah. It's completely overrun. There are thousands of walkers there." "Walkers?" Luke asked. "You mean those limping corpses that eat people, right?" Clementine nodded in response. "That's impossible. It can't be that bad," Tavia said. "It is," Clementine said. "Being covered in muck is the only way I got out of the city." The two adults looked at each other with questioning stare before they turned to Clementine. "Now hold on," Luke said. "How does getting covered in muck keep lurkers from attacking? My guardian Lee cut one of them open and covered me with its blood and stuff." Clementine said as she trailed off, shuddered at the thought of being smeared with entrails, as well as the pain of losing her guardian. When you're covered, they think you're one of them. They don't recognize you as food. Once again, the two adults looked at each other. "What do you think?" Luke asked. "I'm going to check it out, see what the city's like," Tavia said. "You get her back to the car." "All right, sounds fair," Luke said as he stood upright. "Right, see you in a while," Tavia said. She then went to the same direction on that Clementine I came from. The girl couldn't help but feel like it would be the last time she would ever see that woman, and she knew it would be the case if Tavia didn't heed her warning. "Let's go," Luke said, as he took her hand and led her to the vehicle. "I bet you're hungry and tired." "I am, a little," Clementine said. "Don't worry, I'll get you something to eat in the car and then I'll let you sleep. But that sweater's shirt's gotta go. No way we can clean that up, and it ain't healthy for you to wear it," Luke said. "Okay," Clementine said. As they continued to walk in silence through the countryside, Clementine felt like she was going to doze off at any minute. "We're almost there," Luke said. Clementine trudged further along with the man. Eventually they reached a car which was on the other side of the road. Luke pulled up the sweatshirt off of her and went to the trunk of the car. He rummaged through the trunk while Clementine opened the door and crawled into the back seat. She lay down and closed her eyes. "Someone's sleepy," Luke said. Clementine felt him tuck her in with a blanket. She didn't open her eyes. She was too exhausted, and she knew her hair would be a mess if she woke up again. But she didn't care. It was time for sleep. A teenage boy walked into the abandoned town as the evening got closer to nighttime. He had short brown hair and brown eyes, and wore a hooded sweatshirt with a black t-shirt underneath it, a blue pair of jeans, and a pair of boots. He had a compound bow with a quiver full of arrows and knives that were holstered to his belt. At that moment he was out of Savannah. He was hoping to get to the city after hearing the survivors camp within it, but his hopes were dashed out when he saw the city was overrun with walkers. He was now in the nearby town. It was too late to go look for anywhere else to stay. He could be at disadvantage by going back to where they could find somewhere else to sleep. He went into a nearby house and crouched down as he entered, his bow in his hand, and he had an arrow lined up, ready in case the house was occupied by unfriendly people or walkers. He went inside and picked up two voices. "We're going back out there tomorrow," a woman said. "I know. We'll find her," the man said. The teenager went to the source of the voices and saw a young couple talking to each other. The woman was wearing a purple and white coat, light blue jeans and gray shorts. The man wore a brown coat, blue jeans, and black shoes. Although they were sitting, the man appeared significantly shorter than the woman. "I just hope wherever she is at, she's okay," the woman said. "Yeah, me too," the man said with a frown. "Who knows, maybe Molly found her and they're trying to find us." "I hope so," the woman said. The teen figured that they could be possibly about a lost daughter or something similar. All they could tell was that they were distraught over a missing girl. He crept away and went upstairs. He could tell that there were decent people crashing at the same house as them. Wouldn't be a bad idea. He made his way up the stairs and into one of the rooms, and then he went over to a nearby bed to lay down to rest. He had his compound bow in hand as he slept. Clementine's eyes opened as she yawned and sat up in her seat. "You're finally awake, eh?" Luke said. Clementine looked up at the vehicle where Luke and Tavia were. Tavia was in the passenger seat sleeping while Luke drove the car down the road. "Thanks for the heads up yesterday," Luke said. "Probably saved Tavia's life. She told me the whole city was overrun. Also said you weren't joking. I guess we ought to give you more credit from now on." Clementine shrugged in response. "Where are we going? How long was I out?" Clementine asked. "We're going back to Maya and Tavia's community. Our leader Bill has sent us down to check Savannah on a supposed community that was in the middle of the city. But I guess it fell," Luke said. "As for how long you were out, I'd say almost 24 hours. Clementine's eyes widened. "That long?" she said. "You were tired," Luke said. "You needed your rest. By the way, there's some animal crackers and cheese and cracker snack back there for you. Go ahead and eat. Clementine looked down at the food items that she picked up. She kept wondering if Omid and Krista were alive and safe. She wanted to cry since she probably would never see them again. However, that the case for everyone was that she never ever met. Her stomach growled for food, and Clementine had to oblige. She was hungry. She opened the cheese and cracker snack first and started to eat in silence. So, what's your name? Luke asked. I'm sure by now you know that I'm Luke and that's Tavia. I'm Clementine, Clementine said. Clementine, that's a pretty name, Luke said. Thanks. Took me forever to spell it out in preschool, Clementine said. I bet, Luke said. What was the last grade you were in? He had a smirk on his face. What? No, of course not. I was in the 2nd grade. I would be in 3rd grade right now if there were no walkers, Clementine said. Luke chuckled and said, I'm just joking with you, kid. A small smile formed on Clementine's face. Luke didn't seem too bad. Maybe she could trust these strangers since they were going to a community. She just hoped that it wasn't a city. Lee had told her that going into cities was too dangerous. She ate the cheese and crackers snack rather quickly before she started to eat the animal crackers. So, can you tell me about everything that happened? Luke asked. Clementine sighed and she said, Okay, but I might cry at the end. You don't have to if you don't want to, Luke said. I'm sure Bill will want to know everything. He's not as sympathetic as me. Clementine sighed and she said, I was 8 when all this happened. My babysitter was looking after me. But when this guy crazy bust in and attacked her, I didn't know until later that she was a walker. I guess I got scared, so I ran outside and hid in my treehouse. I didn't come down for a couple days after that. The whole time I was up there, I kept hearing people scream, walkers groaning, and another crazy guy that wanted to get in my house to steal the TV. This time he was a human. Luke chuckled and he said, What else would a TV be nowadays? Not sure. I don't think he ever thought of it. He tried to bust down the back door of the rock when it was unlocked, Clementine said with a smile. Luke scoffed and he said, I guess some people are just born nothing up there. Clementine giggled in response before continuing. A couple of days later, I heard a gunshot from behind my fence. It was pretty close, so I checked it out and saw this man. He was yelling for help. I headed back inside my treehouse since I knew what would happen next. He was different, though. He somehow got into my backyard and went to my house. Hopefully he knew how to use the back door, Luke said. Yeah, he did, finally, Clementine said. He seemed all right. I talked to him with the use of my walkie-talkie. I told him to be careful because I believe Sandra was a monster by that point, but he got attacked by her anyway. I ran down from my treehouse and helped him by giving him a hammer. After he got the hammer, he started to bash the walker's head until he finally killed it. Who was this man? Luke asked. His name was Lee. He took care of me after that. We met some more people along the way. At some point there was 10 of us. But then people happened, Clementine said. What do you mean? Luke asked. Clementine frowned. 3 months after all this madness began, these people who owned a dairy farm convinced us that they could help feed us. But they ate people and made everyone in my group eat our friend. Luke jumped out from the front of the seat. You're kidding. I wish I was. Lee got downstairs just in time to prevent me from eating Mark, who was a member of my group, Clementine said. We eventually got out of here, but not before we lost another person. He was kind of mean, but he was trying to look out for someone. Damn, Luke muttered. A week later, everything seemed normal, but then we got attacked by bandits and all the noise attracted the walkers. My friend Duck got bitten after we pulled over. The adults started fighting over who was working with the bandits. Once the fighting stopped, we looked over at Kenny, which was one of Lee's friends. I heard a gunshot and a thud, and I looked back to see that Carly was dead. Lily, the leader, had killed her. Oh my gosh, just like that? Out of cold blood? Luke said. Right in front of you? Yeah, Clementine said. It just got worse from there. We drove down the road a little until we found a train. We met the owner of the train. I think his name was Chuck. Anyway, we got in the train since it was faster than the RV until, well, Duck was ready. He was done. I was scared and sad at the same time. Kenny and Katja took Duck into the woods so I wouldn't see him die while Lee talked to me. And when I heard the gunshot, Lee went into the woods to investigate. And while he was gone, Chuck told me that I'll become just like Duck. Now, why would he say that? Luke asked. He seemed shocked and angry. He said that since I didn't know how to use a gun yet, but I told Lee about it and he went to talk to Chuck. After that, he taught me how to shoot and we made a plan, Clementine said. Well, I guess it all worked out then, Luke said. Yeah, eventually we made it to Savannah and fought this place called Crawford, Clementine said. Crawford? That's the place Bill wanted us to go check it out. So your group took it down? Luke asked. Clementine shook her head and said, No, they had already fallen by the time we showed up. The place was crawling with walkers. Oh, okay, Luke said. He sounded a bit more relieved that her previous group wasn't hostile. So, why are you there? We needed stuff for our boat we found, Clementine said. Crawford picked the city clean, so it just made sense. I see. And you went along? Luke asked. Clementine nodded and said, I thought it would be nice where my mom and dad were. That still is really dangerous. Try to be a bit more careful in the future. People are typically 10 times worse than lurkers, Luke said. Sorry, I didn't care about the time. I just wanted to get to my parents, Clementine said. So, once we got everything, we met up in the classroom at the school. The walkers were trying to barge in. Things got crazy, but we got out. What happened after that? Luke asked. Well, at that point, I was talking with someone in my radio. He said that he had my parents, and I figured since I trusted Lee, that I turned out well I could trust him. But I was wrong. There was a whimper in her voice. He kidnapped me and locked me in a room. Did he hurt you? Luke asked with a worried tone of his voice. No, but he lied to me. Got me away from Lee. Lee saved me, but he was bit. I only found out later that he was dying. Hot tears streamed down her face. It hurt to talk about all of it. That's rough. I'm sorry that it happened to you, Luke said. Clementine nodded before she laid down in the back seat, curled up into a ball. She just wanted to cry herself. Listen, Clementine, where we're going, there are some really good people. I won't lie, some of them are a bit difficult to deal with, but there are far few between. You stay away from them and stay close to the good people, and maybe you'll be happy again, Luke said. I can't forget what happened, Clementine said with a whimper. You won't, but we'll try and provide you with a happier life. Just give us a chance, Luke said. Clementine contemplated over his words until she finally said, Okay.